When I hear people in church even, they say, I got to get out of the way and let the younger people run the church. I want, younger people mentored by people who are in that quote-unquote retirement age.
That was Ben Taatjes talking about the next important life and retirement question that you have to answer. Does it matter? Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, co-host of Retire Repurposed. On behalf of Ben Taatjes and myself, we're so glad that you are joining us here today. Well, on the show, we challenge people to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Have you ever tried to think outside the box of what retirement should look like for you? Believe it or not, you have been spoon-fed over the years a specific way society would like you to view your life by the time you retire. We're going to talk about that a bit on today's show. Society's going to tell you things like retirement is now all about you, when you can truly live and be happy, if you could just finally be free from the confines of work. And in fact, if you can eliminate work from the life equation, you've won. And the more of very little you can do, the more you're doing it right in retirement. Well, we offer a different solution and a different narrative on this show. Unfortunately, this retirement paradigm has given work and adding value a bad name. In fact, many people we know of are ashamed when they choose to work in retirement because it's viewed by their peers and family as failing in retirement. And because of these misnomers and flaws in the retirement model, it can leave retirees wanting more, missing out, and wondering, does it even matter? So if you're new to the show, welcome. We speak a different language regarding retirement, so I hope you are ready. Well, a rapidly changing world along with a loss in identity and purpose can oftentimes lead a retiree to face the difficult question, does it matter? The truth is, many retirees get used to the idea of being let down or lose hope by what was supposed to be the is-all, end-all season of life. In this podcast, Ben Taatjes talks about how retirement was never designed to fulfill the life of a retiree, and he gives 4 specific reasons why, yes, it does matter. Enjoy this episode. Well, welcome back, everybody. We are continuing this series on difficult life questions. We are continuing this series with the next question, does it matter? We're so glad you are joining us here today. We got a great show on tap. So again, just another phenomenal episode here. We are glad you're joining us. Before we get started, just a reminder, we have a brand new Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Join a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. This Facebook group is made just for you. If you're of retirement age, approaching retirement, all the things you need to know, this is the best way to connect with everything that we talk about on the show. Lots of times we'll have links to studies, charts, pictures, the podcast replays all on there. So if you're on Facebook, go to facebook.com, search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement to join this growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. Ben Taatjes joins me on the show here today, and we have spent now, it looks like about 4 episodes talking about what we would call life's most difficult questions. We've covered who am I? We've covered where do I belong? We've covered what am I supposed to do? And Ben, last week we talked about have I done enough? Man, that is such an important question that people maybe don't have the guts to really face in the mirror, that this is a question that's maybe troubling them in some ways.
Yeah, I think it's one that I resonate with. I'm kind of my tendencies tend to fall on achievement, and tendencies tend to be almost workaholism. I think when people look at have I done enough, it oftentimes comes back to our identity. We're trying to fill a void of something, and many times we're looking for that achievement to do that. And I've struggled with that. Trying to just think, I'll do a little more, I'll create more, I'll build something bigger. And today's show actually will tie right back into that.
Yeah, huge question today. Does it matter? But before we get to that, again, last week's show talking about have I done enough? It came from the heart of, when can you give yourself permission to rest? We all recognize that rest, especially earned rest, is important. But where's the line? Where is the difference between being too invested in achievement, but yet giving yourself some permission to say, I have done enough, and I do allow myself to have a little bit of rest here.
Yeah, well, it comes down to why am I doing what I'm doing? If I'm doing that work and I'm trying to fill a void that we know that work and achievement can't fill. And that's really what I'm trying to do. I'm going to get let down because I'm going to see that down the road, no matter where I achieve the next thing, I want the next thing. The next thing, if I'm doing it to fill that hole that we know can't be filled by things of this world, that's when I think you cross that line.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that was really my main takeaway from last week's show. So if you missed that show, have I done enough? Again, we answered that question last week. Go to your favorite podcasting platform. We're on iTunes. We're all over the place. We got lots of new listeners too because we've joined a number of new platforms here just in the last couple of weeks and months. But go back, listen to that show, and maybe you have somebody in your life that maybe as a high achiever, perhaps dances that line of a workaholic. Maybe he or she is retired, approaching retirement. This would be a great show for them to listen to again. So go check that out. Okay, so we're going to talk about our question today. Does it matter? Obviously, I think you probably know the answer to that question, but where do you want to start with kind of dissecting this particular question?
Well, let's tie into last week's show kind of and what we've been talking about with that achievement mindset. And I think if you start with why I think it matters when we chase after the typical American dream or the typical hey, I'm going to retire and do nothing. I'm going to look like society wants me to look in retirement, where I focus on my needs. I think you're going to be just so disappointed with the results because I've seen that. I've seen people walk through that. So I'll start with, does it matter if I just work or if I just work for a while and then retire as if society tells me I should retire? Well, it matters first of all to you. You will not be come into a place of fullness and be where God created you to be in retirement if you're retiring the way society would tell you retire.
Yeah, so this doesn't matter. Yes, it does. And this is going to be the first thing we're going to talk about here. Does it matter? Yes, it does. And it matters to you. I wanted you to answer this question because you mentioned it. You said, I've seen it. I would venture to guess a lot of people that you have helped retire, the hundreds, if not thousands, over the course of 2 decades. Do they come out swinging with this particular question, or is it weaved into some of the other dialogue, some of the other ideas or mindsets they have? How does this question or lack thereof an answer for it come out that you've seen over the years?
Well, mostly it comes out from people watching what's going on in society around them. They say, I can't make a difference. What good can an old guy like me really do? I'm retired. I'm going to retire. I'm kind of becoming less impactful anyway. I was pushed out of my job. I got to quote unquote retirement age, and they start to see as if they can't do it. Right? They're like, I'm not going to make a difference anyway. So it doesn't really matter if I just go ahead and just take my restful retirement years like I'd always planned. That's how it tends to come out. It's not as if they get into retirement right away and say, I don't matter. It doesn't matter. It's more, they see things around them. They're like, I can't change it. Yeah.
It's almost like they have kind of a mindset of like kind of a shrug my shoulders. So I guess I can't change it. So I shouldn't even try. It's kind of the Eeyore mentality a little bit, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think when I look at that mentality, I see people that kind of are like, it just retirement just let me down. It's just the way it is. And that's I think of the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and he talks specifically to this idea, maybe not in the words of what a retiree might be feeling or facing, but more, every time I read, Jared, I'm thinking, how can I apply this knowledge? How can I apply this book, this podcast, whatever it is, to a retiree, right? And I heard this recently, and Tim Keller, obviously he passed away here, a little while back, and he was a huge C.S. Lewis fan. I was listening to one of his interviews, and he made this really this great tie to how people are let down in life when they're trying to fill that void with things that really can't fulfill them because they're of this world. So he quoted in Mere Christianity, he says, there's all sorts of things in this world that offer to give it to you, but they never quite keep their promise. And I read that and I thought, this is kind of what retirees many times feel. And he said, many times that people are searching for things that really they want the world to fulfill, but they find out that really it cannot fill them. And he went on further in that chapter in Mere Christianity, talk about there's really two wrong ways to look at that feeling of like I'm trying to fill that void, two wrong ways and one right way. And the first one, he says, is really the fool's way. He says you tend to blame the thing that didn't get you to help you feel the way you thought it would feel, right? So look at a marriage, right? So if we get married, and he talks about if you're going to look at it in the fool's way,
right,
you're going to get married and then end up blaming your spouse. Mm-hmm. You're going to end up saying, well, there's a different woman out there, so I'm going to chase that, right? And success does that too. I'm going to get to this hobby or that hobby. It says I'm going to travel from continent to continent, from hobby to hobby, always thinking that the latest is the real thing. I'm always disappointed. So that's what C.S. Lewis says. That's number one. The second way is the way of the disillusioned, sensible man, he says. And this is someone that decides at some point that, you know what, it just didn't fulfill me. No. And that's, I'm just, when I was younger, it seemed like it would. And now I'm just coming to the realization it never will. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like the retiree we were just talking about, where it's like, I don't look forward to anything anymore because I'm so used to, I'm disillusioned. I'm used to things letting me down. Yeah. He says, of course, one feels like that when one's young, but by the time you get to the age I am, you've given up chasing rainbows end. And that, I think, is that way of the disillusioned man. Yeah. And I think C.S. Lewis does such a great job of explaining those two ways that many people look to be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. We know as a Christian that the only way to really fill that hole that you're starting to feel, whether that be in retirement or any stage of life, it's the Christian way. Mm-hmm. And that he does a wonderful job of explaining is that, hey, a baby feels hunger. Good thing. There's food. Yeah. A duck, it says, wants to swim. Well, there's such thing as water. And he goes on to say, we are created to have a yearning for fullness through Christ. We are created to be, to be His children, right? To be, to glorify God. And without that, you're gonna be let down. So I go back to, it matters to you, the retiree, because if you are going to retire and just be like, I can't make a difference, and it doesn't, I'm not going to change anything. It's just, retirement let me down, but I'm kind of used to being let down by things. Mm-hmm. I think you're looking at as that second way, that disillusioned man.
Yeah, but there's so much to break down. Kind of what you just said. The first thing that came to mind was the showroom effect. We've mentioned on the show a long time ago when we first started this podcast is that really, there's nothing outside of your Creator that can fully make you full or filled. You know what I'm saying? And we do this with everything. We do it with a new car, as you mentioned kind of in your book, Repurpose. You talk about the showroom effect. Like there's this thing that's going to fulfill me. We do it with marriage all the time. Isn't it fun to watch? We've been married now for, almost a couple of decades. You've been married 20 plus years. But isn't it funny where you see these young couples and they're just so excited for the wedding day, and they haven't even thought past like day 2 of marriage. They thought like, this is going to be the thing, and after this, it's just there's not going to be any more struggles, and everything's going to come to pass, and it will be, daisies and kitties and puppies after that. Retirement's the exact same way. You've said many times, retirement cannot make you happy. It's not a thing. It's a thing. It's an external thing outside of the Lord that isn't there to fulfill you. And so I think that's a massive thing that we have to continue to harp on this podcast, that if you were unhappy before retirement, you're going to be unhappy during retirement because this thing cannot fulfill you. It's not designed to fulfill you, right?
No, it was designed so that if you couldn't work, retirement really came from, the Social Security Administration and having some income there. You look at, it's actually the old age and disabilities. Mm-hmm. That's really what it is. And it's when you've gotten to the point where you can no longer work was really the intention. It's not when you didn't want to work. No. And you look back to the beginning of pensions and all that. We've talked about that in other shows, but that's where it was. That's what it's designed to do. It wasn't made to fulfill you. Yeah. Your wife, I hate to say it, Jared, she wasn't actually made to fully fulfill you. Can she add joy? Does she add joy? I look at my life, I can't imagine it without my wife in it. Yep. But was she designed to fulfill me? Yeah, no, she was designed. Her identity is, she was created for God's glory, not mine. She was created for God's glory. Can she fulfill a role and can we have a wonderful relationship together? Yes. But was she created for that? No.
Yeah, exactly. And the disillusioned man, I think that's a really interesting concept. I've never heard that before, but I can just kind of sense and feel and picture the person that's just kind of given up. And we maybe even know people that are in that position where they've kind of reached the latter phases of their life, and they've just they've thrown in the towel, and it's just such a hopeless feeling to watch people with that. taking this to a spiritual sense, I think that's exactly where the enemy wants you to think. They want you to, he would love it if you would just kind of give up, throw in the towel, and just think that all hope is lost and there's no point. And so again, to try to fight that and not accept that, I think that's a huge part of this, not coming to the point where you accept it, where it is what it is, and I have to accept it. So I'm just going to move on and just die someday. That's unfortunately kind of the way it sounds.
Yeah, we've talked about being too old to work and too young to die. That feeling of I'm just kind of in this season of life, and how sad that is, right? And I think if we're looking for retirement, even if it's the best retirement years, you have plenty of income, you've got everything you wanted. But if you're looking for that to fulfill you, if you're looking for that, to really make you full, you're looking for something that it was never intended to do. We know as Christians we're created to glorify God. And until you find that place where even in retirement, especially in retirement, where you can do that.
We're talking about, does it matter? Of course, the answer is yes, it does matter. We got 4 areas where it matters. We covered the first one, and that is it matters to you. Ben, what's the second one?
Well, many times retirees happen to be, the patriarchs of the family, right? And you look at your family, it matters to them. It absolutely matters. You have, and sometimes I know when we're aging, it feels like, they don't want to hang out with grandpa. They don't want to, I remember my dad today was just talking, he's got back from a fishing trip, and they're talking about they divide into the boats, right? There's these 4 boats, and the brothers go out, and they all took their sons. And I couldn't go, but my dad said, some of them kind of think they got the short end of the stick riding with grandpa. And I think sometimes we feel that way as grandparents. It's like, does it really matter? Can I do a lot for my family? The answer is absolutely, and you need to, right? We talk about legacy all the time with people. We say, we want you to differentiate legacy and inheritance. Sure, inheritance is part of passing on. Someday you can pass wealth to the next generation, hopefully before you die, right? But true legacy, that's your people impact. That's what you got to make sure you pass on to your kids, to your family. And that's what lasts, right? I mean, usually family wealth lasts maybe 2 generations at the absolute most, but those true legacy things can last forever.
Yeah, I think it's a Western culture thing where there's a bigger separation between grandparents and the younger generations, especially the grandchildren. I think if you study Eastern cultures, more ancient cultures, I would say, even in the Jewish and Christian worlds, they were together. They were all part of the same community all the time. And so even this idea of, hey, like grandpa and grandma live way over there, son and daughters live over here and the kids are over here. And then, again, take that one step further. Once you retire, now you're going to be shipped off to warmer climates and live among that. That's not really part of God. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that has gotten away from the family unit where grandparents can really plug in and impact their kids and grandkids.
Yeah, it's so important, right? Because we know this generation is the last tie to what I call the greatest generation, which lived the Great Depression, which had those family values. And if you're looking around today and you're thinking, how do I make a difference there? It starts right at home within your family.
Yeah, just one more plug too, by the way. We've got lots of online seminars out there. We did one a couple of months ago called Grand Connections, creating deep, meaningful connections with grandchildren. Go to our YouTube channel. You can find that replay there. But this is the stuff we talk about. Again, if you're new to the show, this is the stuff we're talking about. Does this matter to your family? Is retirement a big deal? You bet it is. And again, there's a lot at stake here. Not to put pressure on you, but there's a lot at stake here, and you have some massive impact to make. All right, so does it matter to you? Yes, it matters to you and your family. What's the third one?
Well, it matters to society. I mean, the world around you. I mean, whether that be your close-knit community or the larger society. I tell you, I've learned a ton, and from reading John Piper over the years, and he has a book, Don't Waste Your Life, and he specifically references. You know where I'm going, Jared, because you kind of smiled. I look at when John Piper wrote about kind of how the American tragedy on not finishing your life, who misses out on that? Not only them, the retiree, but also community. He talks specifically about, he was reading this story from Reader's Digest in a 1998 edition, where he says that there was this couple who took an early retirement from their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago, and I'll just quote it directly here. John Piper wrote in that book, Don't Waste Your Life, he said, there's an American tragedy, how not to finish one's life. He said, I'll tell you what the real tragedy is. I will show you how to waste your life. Consider a story from the February 1998 edition of Reader's Digest. which tells about a couple who took an early retirement from their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago when he was 59 and she was 51. Now they live in Punta Gorda, Florida, where they cruise on their 30-foot trawler, play softball, and collect shells. And at first, when I read this, I thought it might be a joke, a spoof on the American dream, but it wasn't. Tragically, this was the dream. Come to the end of your life, your one and only precious God-given life, and let the last great work of your life, before you give an account to your Creator, be this: playing softball and collecting shells. Picture them before Christ on the great day of judgment. Look, Lord, see my shells. That is a tragedy. And people today are spending billions of dollars to persuade you to embrace this tragic dream. Over against that, I put my protest. Don't buy it. Don't waste your life. I think he nails it there. And again, nothing wrong with retirement, Jared. But when that is your single passion, like, hey, my passion here is to just retire and collect seashells, man, as a retiree, you're missing out on a lot. You're missing out, as we already covered, but society is missing out as well. That's the tragedy of really that American dream.
I think we just offended probably a number of people listening here. What do you say to that, though? Again, where's the line? Because you could accuse us of talking out of both sides of our mouth, where we say, retirement's good and relaxation is good and leisure is good and having less stress is good, but then we come back with a John Piper quote where he's basically trashing the whole idea. Where's the line?
The line's drawn when we forget that we were not created for just that. We will all be answering to our Maker someday, right? And God created us to live in that place where we are glorifying Him. Now, if you think that traveling aboard a boat all the time and watching for seashells and walking the beaches of Florida, and that's all you're going to do, that will fulfill you, or that will be a good use of your time. That's how you glorify God. Well, then that's your decision. Yeah. But what I think it happens is those are all great things in between the other thing. Can you glorify God doing that? Is there redemptive qualities in what you're doing? You're enjoying God's creation. You're probably doing a number of other things. But if you're doing this as if it's a selfish ambition, it's, hey, I just want to simply relax and focus on living the American dream. Yeah. I'm not going to help people. I'm going to hang out in the community that looks and acts and everybody's just like me. I think that's when, if people are truly honest with what their retirement should look like, that's not what it was meant to be. Yeah, exactly. Again, it goes back to this whole retirement lie that I've mentioned on the show, and I've articulated it a number of different ways, but basically the society is telling you the more of nothing that you can do, the more you are winning. And they'll never come out and say that. That's not what the lie says, but it is implied, and I can hear it if you read between the lines when people say things like, hey, what do you got planned today? Nothing. And they're like super excited about that. And while, again, disclaimer, rest is good, relaxation is good, that cannot be the end goal. So I think you're onto something there. It's a mindset and a heart set. Yeah, and without you, hear this. You are such a powerful group of people, more wealth, more wisdom than any other before you. So when I hear people in church even, they say, I got to get out of the way and let the younger people run the church. You hear that. I don't want to serve because the younger people should be doing it. I don't want the younger people leading many organizations. I want maybe younger people that have been mentored by people of more wisdom and age, but I don't want young people doing that. I've seen them run organizations, and many times it's not great. So I want people who younger people mentored by people who are in that quote unquote retirement age. We've got one left here. Does it matter to you? Yes. Does it matter to your family? Yes. It matters to society. We got about a minute left. Who else does it matter to? Well, it matters to the kingdom of God. I mean, it matters to our Maker. As we said before, God created us really to live with this passion to glorify Him. We cannot and will not fully come alive and live our best life unless we're doing that. I mean, the Bible's so clear on that. It talks about it over and over. I mean, in Isaiah 43:6-7, it's, I was created, right? It talks about how we're created for His glory. We're not created for our own. So I think life gets wasted, and this is again from Piper, life gets wasted when we don't live for the glory of God. And I mean all of life should be lived for the glory of God. Well, thank you so much for listening today. If you'd like a copy of Ben's book, Repurpose, The Untold Story of Retirement in America, just visit our website, retirerepurposed.com. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember,
Don't retire. Become repurposed. We'll see you then.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.